Mark Driscoll did not violate Matthew 18 when he rebuked the male stripper at the men's conference.
Spirit Life!
Hey, I'm Bruce on Spirit Life. I do Christian commentary. I can't believe the words that came out of my mouth in that order. Who would have ever thought that that sentence would be an intro for a video? But yes, you heard that correctly. Some of you have already heard the story, but if you haven't, there was a recent men's conference. You can see some of the details in the description. But Mark Driscoll, a famous preacher who has been controversial to say the least, actually came up for his session and rebuked what had occurred at the intro for this men's conference. At the beginning was basically a male stripper. Now, the way that it was spun was that this man was demonstrating male strength, but he was using a stripper pole. He was doing some acrobatics, and he did use some strength, of course, but he was shirtless. It was weird, it was sensual, and there was a bunch of other weird stuff that went into that intro, like, the flames and the stuff. And I guess at the beginning, maybe the people that put on the conference were thinking, hey, we got to do something extravagant. We got to do something big. Let's do something unusual. Let's think outside the box. As a creative, I think the same way. I'm always trying to think what's different. And I can imagine maybe the person that first prompted the idea was like, oh, I know this guy, or we could do something that, hey, normally you think of dance as a female thing, but men can be strong and show their strength through dance. Yeah, let's do that. And then it turned into this whole thing where basically it's a male stripper on a strip pole. So that was how they started the men's conference. Now, my goal today is not to criticize the conference. I have no idea who got saved, who was touched, who the Lord ministered to through the conference. I'm not trying to judge the conference, but that first initial incident, I could definitely see where it was crossing a line, because this is supposed to be a Christian event that's honoring Jesus, and I think that, maybe that crossed the line. Whether I think it crossed the line, whether you think it crossed the line, the issue for today is whether or not Mark Driscoll crossed a line. When it was his turn to speak, he came up and he was talking about the spirit of Jezebel, sexual immorality, this spirit of rebellion against the Lord. He talked about the Asherah pole, and he said that he believed that their men's conference had actually allowed an Asherah pole. He described that pole where the guy was dancing as something that was unethical and should not have happened. It was immoral, and the dance itself he thought was immoral. It represented sexual immorality. Now, while he was speaking, the pastor who was running the conference at his church interrupted him from off stage. You could hear his voice, and he said, hey, you're out of line, you're out of line. And Mark Driscoll stopped, and he said, okay, I accept that. I'll stop talking, and he walked off the stage. Now, sometime later, they both came back on the stage together, and they had kind of a reconciliation moment where they were talking about how much they appreciated each other, they affirmed one another, and things like that. Now, to understand the context, Pastor Mark was not rebuking Pastor John Lindell, the orchestrator of the event, personally, and he wasn't calling him by name. And furthermore, he did not have personal beef with that pastor, as if Pastor Lindell had offended Pastor Driscoll. Driscoll wasn't saying, this guy did me wrong, he hurt my feelings, he overlooked me, or he criticized me and I didn't like it. There was no personal offense. When Driscoll offered his rebuke of, or his description of, the opening event as something that was immoral, he wasn't singling out a person, he wasn't personally offended. He was saying this public event, of which I have taken part, I think actually we did improperly. I respect the way he said it. I think he actually did not violate Matthew 18 when he said this. However, when John Lindell came out and he rebuked Mark Driscoll publicly, he said that it was because Mark didn't do Matthew 18. He said it was because he didn't follow the procedure that Jesus described. So let's go to Matthew 18 and see what it says. In verse 15, Jesus said, if you have a personal offense with a brother, go to them privately. Try to work things out. Try to reason with them. Try to reconcile with them privately as two individuals. If they don't listen, then you can go bring another brother. if they're sinning against you and they're continuing to do this bad thing, then you can bring the whole church and you can actually rebuke them or disperse them from your fellowship. Now, it didn't need to go that far in this incident. But when Lindell came out and said that Mark didn't follow Matthew 18, he was wrong. But even if he was right, then he would have been a hypocrite because he was guilty of not doing a private and personal confrontation with Mark Driscoll. He could have waited till later. He could have said, hey, time out, I need to talk to you backstage for a minute. That would have been awkward, but no more awkward than how things already played out. But if he really wanted to follow Matthew 18 with his rebuke of Mark Driscoll, he could have done that privately. So it was wrong for him to rebuke Mark Driscoll publicly for his public rebuke of the intro. This sounds so convoluted. I feel like my video is going to be hard to follow, especially if you're not familiar with the situation. But let me give just a couple other thoughts real quick. I think in the church, and amongst Christians in general, we don't follow Matthew 18 enough. I've been the victim of somebody going behind my back, gossiping behind me. Lots of people, actually. I'm the pastor of a church, so this happens frequently. You'd be surprised. The pastor is the one that gets talked about a lot and criticized a lot. But you know, instead of coming to me directly with their problems, a lot of people have just gossiped or complained behind my back, and things have festered and escalated, and it's really not helpful. I mean, even if you're not trying to be spiritual, you're not trying to be holy, you're not trying to please the Lord, it's just inefficient. It's dysfunctional to do things that way. It is much more efficient and it's much more constructive to go straight to the person with whom you have a problem and talk to it face to face. You know, sometimes a problem is just a misunderstanding. In fact, I would think most of the time it's just a misunderstanding. But if not, at least you can see eye to eye. You can respect one another. You can understand one another better. And it's going to bring more unity. Even if you ultimately don't land perfectly eye to eye, you'll still have more unity around the big picture and around the things about which you do agree as Christians. And it's just a better way of doing things. Matthew 18 is a much better way than gossip or secret slander or just being disgruntled. Even if you never gossiped or told someone else your problem, but you're just grumpy about this problem and you're holding a grudge and you're building up bitterness towards a person, it's better to go to them, work things out. But that being said, going back to Mark Driscoll, again, this was not a personal problem that he had with Pastor Lindell. It was a public rebuke, if you can even call it that. I mean, normally he's very strong. In fact, I've heard Mark Driscoll be much more authoritative, much more strong. He's gotten in trouble in the past for being too overbearing and what some people would call spiritually abusive. I didn't hear that tone in his initial remarks. I didn't hear that tone at all. I heard him saying that he was concerned, he was burdened, he was praying, he was up all night, he couldn't sleep. He was really, really burdened with this sincere sensation that he wants to please the Lord. I think he really meant that. I think he really was concerned for the others who might have been led astray by this public event. And so it was wrong for Lindell to chastise him for not doing Mark 18, especially when he wasn't doing it himself. But I don't think he violated that principle. What do you think? I've rambled long enough. This is a convoluted issue. If you haven't seen the full story, go check it out. And let me know your comments below after you've kind of understood a little bit more of the context. Did you think that Mark Driscoll violated Matthew 18, or was he in the right to give the rebuke or the correction that he gave? Furthermore, what do you think about the reconciliation that happened afterwards? Did that undermine his rebuke? Did it make it seem like he was condoning things after all, or did you think that it was an appropriate thing? Your thoughts and your comments are always what makes this channel so special. I really enjoy the discussion. So hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and share this video with somebody. This is Bruce on Spirit Life.
Won't you come, won't you come?